Most people think real estate is about listings, prices, and closing dates. But the truth is, most decisions aren't made on spreadsheets. They are made in moments of uncertainty, pressure, and hope. Welcome back to BizBlend, where we unpack the human side of business growth without burning out. I'm your host Yusuf, and today I'm joined by Brett Riesner, an athlete and executive real estate agent, and a 2025 8 as real estate rising star. This conversation is not about square footage, it's about how big life decisions actually get made and what professionals need to understand if they want to serve people well in high stakes moments. With that, I welcome my guest Brett to the show.
Thank you, Yusuf. I'm so excited to be here and grateful for the opportunity to speak to your followers.
Perfect. So, Brett, before we talk about strategies or markets, I'm curious what first made it clear to you that real estate was less about property and more about people navigating change?
Well, that's a great question, and I think my story is probably the answer. Real estate is very personal to me, not because I love houses. It's personal because I know what it's like to feel like when life falls apart. Um, in a 12-month span, I went through thyroid cancer. I lost my job. I went through a divorce, and I lost my home. That's not just a rough season. That's a complete life reset. um,
Wow.
there were moments in that year where I didn't just question my plan, I even questioned my identity. But that season taught me something I'll never forget. When everything is stripped away, you find out what your foundation really is. For me, that foundation became my faith. I learned to stop relying on my own understanding, stop trying to
Mm.
control everything, and start surrendering daily. Here's where it connects to real estate. A home isn't just a transaction, stability, security. It's a place where families heal, where kids grow up, where marriages start, where people grieve, people rebuild. A home is often the most significant financial and emotional decision someone makes, especially if they're in a season of transition.
Mm.
A lot of agents
Yeah.
focus on closing. I focus on clarity, protection, and peace. I lead with data, strategy, and negotiation, but most importantly, with empathy, because I've lived the
Mm.
weight behind these decisions. I pray over my clients in the process, not just in a showy way, but because I genuinely care that they make a wise decision and walk into their next chapter with confidence. So
Mm.
today, real estate to me isn't about homes. It's about helping people step into stability, to build wealth and wisdom, and create a foundation strong enough to handle whatever life brings you next. Because I know what it's like to rebuild from nothing, and I know what it's like to watch God build it to something better. Something I always say is kind of a joke is that real estate isn't HGTV. It's one of the biggest life decisions people make. My job isn't just to sell houses. It's to help people make calm, strategic decisions with great information, great negotiation, and great timing.
Yeah. Wow. You know, that awareness that people are not just buying homes, they are moving through transitions, sets the tone for everything that follows.
Yeah.
And there's a belief that real estate success comes down to speed, negotiation tactics, and aggressive deal making. But what does that view miss about how decisions are actually made from your perspective?
Well, I think that's what the clients see and feel, but I don't think that's where the work actually starts. I think for good agent, the preparation is everything. Before I meet with a client, I've spent an hour or two diving into the markets that they're considering. I put a lot of time and effort into preparation. So we're able to make quick decisions if we find the right property. So for me, preparation is the key to be able to make those quick decisions. This market um, is hot in some areas, that definitely in the micro markets. There are houses that sit, there are houses that move quickly. And what I see is there's two markets happening at once, Yusuf. There's the turnkey well-priced homes that are still going the first weekend on the market with multiple offers. And then there's overpriced or dated homes that sit. Price reductions happen faster, and there's a lot more room for negotiation. I think what feels like you have to rush, you have to have an aggressive strategy is if you're not prepared, right? I spend hours with my clients before we even go see houses talking about the possible outcomes. When we're planning to see houses, I'm informing them of this is the first weekend on the market. If you love this, we are going to have to put an offer in immediately. This one we have time on. So they're walking into homes prepared, knowing what strategy and what lever we have to pull on every single property. That removes the emotional stress because they're already aware of it before we're even in that house, before they fall in love with it. They know if they want it, they have to act quickly, but they're also confident because we've already outlined the exact plan to win that house before we've walked into it. And I think that's the differentiator that removes the stress and anxiety of having to move quickly to feeling overwhelmed because there's a plan in place. And that's kind of leads to what you mentioned with strategy. I think it starts all the way at the beginning in that first conversation, really understanding the family dynamics, what's important, what transition in life is happening that's causing this move. Um, I think almost every home purchase or sale is attached to a life event, marriage, divorce, a baby, job change, grief, retirement, relocation, promotions. There's usually something that is kind of the catalyst to drive this move. Most people don't want to go through the stress of moving for no reason. So there's usually an event that's triggering this. So starting with that process to understand the strategy we need to employ, I think is critical.
Mm. What I am hearing is that pointing pressure might close deals, but trust sustains relationships, reputation, and long-term success.
Yeah. Trust isn't a trust gets thrown out a lot by agents, but trust isn't just
Mhm.
like a vibe that you feel. It's built through clarity, transparency, and follow through. And I think that that's what's so important. They don't need an agent; they need a steady decision partner. Um, you know, it's my job to be that calm professional who protects the decision, you know? And I think trust is earned in those really small moments with fast responses, honest advice, doing what you said you would do, and understanding people aren't buying bedrooms. They're buying their next chapter of life. And I think when people feel like a real person, they feel like their story matters and not just the sale. I think that's where you really get to build that trust for life, become their partner in all things. And I think that's really kind of to your point. The most important thing is that trust.
Yeah, that is true. And when clients hesitate or seem stuck, what deeper fears or patterns are usually underneath the surface?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's going to be different for everyone. Some people are comfortable in the financials. Some people are comfortable in the stress. Um, some people are comfortable in the design choices of a house and how they would turn it into a home. Very rarely are each individual person or couple or family comfortable in all of those kind of points of the process, right? So I think the stress comes in where they're least comfortable. So if they're not the financial guru or they don't necessarily understand how the financials work on a house, that's going to be the stress point is when it comes time to make that decision to put in $1 million offer, a $500,000 offer. This is a lot of money for the rest of their life, and so I find oftentimes the stress comes from not understanding. And so whether that's, hey, this home is turnkey ready. You don't have to do anything. You can move in, but it's at a little bit higher of a price point. So making sure they understand the trade-off. And I think it's that the uncertainty is what makes people uncomfortable. If they're not certain of their decision, if they're not certain of the financials, then I advise them to pause and wait. Even if it's a house we should move quickly on, you don't want to rush into this decision. You don't want to have any regrets. And look, if it's the house for you, it'll be there tomorrow after you sleep on it. If it's not, it'll be gone. And so I think just providing that reassurance to my clients in those moments is what is extremely necessary. But again, it all ties back to that preparation. Knowing what's coming removes a lot of that stress, but the uncertainty I think comes from their lack of comfortability, and usually one of those big three topics, whether that's financials, um, the long term implications of this decision, or like kind of how to turn the house into a home. I think that's where those are the three big aspects that people can kind of struggle with. Seeing how it fits their family, right? That's kind of what I mean by the uncertainty of turning a house into a home, is kind of envisioning it. How would we live in this house? What would we do with it? What would we do with this space? I think that can overwhelm people if they can't clearly see what would
Mm,
happen in that moment. And to be honest, I tell my clients, if you don't immediately know what you're doing with this space, this isn't the house for you. Your body, your mind will tell you, and you'll start seeing your kids running around in this room. You'll start seeing your mom move into the basement. It hits you when you walk into that house. It is very clear. So I typically advise them, if that's not happening, this isn't the house.
yeah. The way you put it is that even the hesitation is not like resistance, but as self-protection during major life shifts.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing we do in relationships, right? It's fear. You're whether it's starting a new job, you might have been a vice president who's done this exact job for 15 years. When you walk into a new company for the first time, you've got butterflies. You're nervous if it's going to work out. For what
Mm,
reason? You've been extremely successful for 15 years, right? And so it's the same thing with the house. You've rented
mm,
before, you've understood how to take care of things, you've maybe owned a home before, but it doesn't matter because this is all emotional, right? It's just an exciting and emotional process. And look, we're humans. We're gonna let our emotions get the best of us sometimes. And that's just
yeah.
normal. And I think giving people the space to have those feelings allows them to get through it quicker. Not talking them out of it, not
Mm,
telling them their feelings are wrong, like giving them that space to feel scared and acknowledging it and just talking through it, giving them that space. I find what often happens is people talk themselves out of the fear on their own. They come to those conclusions that they are just afraid. This is the right decision. But I think when agents try to force the deal on people, that's when they start questioning even more. So I usually pull away from the deal and just focus on them. And I think that gives them the space for clarity.
no, no. I want to know from your experience what actually build trust in those moments, especially when timing feels uncertain or emotions are at high. Yeah.
I think it's that I think it's that step back and that compassion and empathy for what they're feeling. I think that not pressuring them into a decision. I think, for me, I'm I tell them up front, like, whether we're buying or selling a home, I have to be two different people. I'm gonna be your big dreamer best friend when we're trying to buy a home, right? Let's go for everything. Let's try to get all the things that we want, even if they may seem unrealistic. Let's go for them and then we'll adjust, right? When I'm selling your home, I need to be the best friend that tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear, right? You may love this couch. That couch is going to hurt you in the sale value of the home because of the color. These paint colors on the wall, that's going to hurt you. And the hard part is you've made so many memories in this home. You've watched your kids grow up. You've built these foundations here that can be hard to hear. But I think
Yeah.
the truth is what people care about the most. And so for me, what I try to do in those moments of uncertainty, of stress, is I go back to the person. I go back to the why. Why are we looking in the first place? What was important to you? What stood out about this house to you? And I'm asking those questions. I'm not telling them, right? Talk to me. Why did you want to see this in the first place? Why did you feel this? Why did you feel that? And I think giving them that space to talk through it, I think
Mm,
really allows people to feel like they matter, right? In this moment, like those emotions matter, and giving them that space and clarity to work through it on their own. And more importantly, me telling them to wait, me telling them like, hey, take a breath, take a pause. It's okay. But as we talked about coming into this one may be gone. That's okay, right? There's no stress. There'll be another one. We'll find another house. It's not the end of the world if this goes off the market today. Um, so I think it's that balanced blend of that empathy, that support, that kind of that best friend shoulder to kind of cry on and talk to, but then also being a professional and wrapping up with like clear expectations of what could happen. And I think that brings them back to the clarity of the moment and then just saying, look, go to dinner, go talk about this. Let's touch base tonight before bedtime and see what you're feeling. And if you need more time, you need more time. Um,
Yeah.
I think the willingness to walk away is what builds the trust.
Yeah. What stands out is patience as a strategy to me. Not waiting passively, but creating clarity so clients can move forward without any regret.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I think every situation is different. And so that initial meeting is what really provides the clarity for me. I spend a half hour to an hour just asking lots of questions. And then we have a follow-up meeting for about a half hour to an hour that is where the strategy comes in. Um, and I think most often people want to find the home and then they figure out a way for it to fit their budget. And I,
Yeah.
I think that's backwards because that creates unrealistic expectations. That creates stress and anxiety because you found the house, but you don't know if you can afford it. You don't know if you can cover the payments. You don't know if this is the right market for you because, I'll be honest, Zillow and some of these websites are the absolute worst at um, budgeting for the Zestimates. It's an
Mm.
algorithm. It's not even factual. So what people's houses are worth it's usually very far off on Zestimate. But more importantly, the payment numbers they put out there are significantly incorrect. So people are thinking they can afford more than they can, or in some cases, they can afford more than what Zillow is saying because the payments are just not calculated correctly. So a lot of this time up front that creates that clarity is getting the financing straightened out. Most people don't know that pre-approvals are good for up to 6 months. So that's the first thing that I always tell my folks to go through is get pre-approved with our lending partners because they'll give you clarity on exactly what you can afford. And in this market, Yusuf, I think most people are surprised. The 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 purchase price does not matter as much as
Mm.
payment matters. So
Mm.
purchase price between two neighborhoods at the same $600,000, 10 minutes apart in the same town could be four, five, $600 a month difference in your payment.
Mm.
And you may not be able to afford the same amount in the same town in two different neighborhoods. So that's just something that usually catches people off guard. And I think that clarity, like you talked about, having that up front removes a lot of that stress.
Yeah. True. But for listeners who want to learn more about your work or connect with you, where's the best place to find you?
My Instagram or my personal website, brettreasoner.8z.com. There's a lot of information on me there, articles I've been featured in. Most of it's on my Instagram. That's where I share a lot of my client stories, my client wins. I really want to relate to folks, and it's got my personal life on there too because I'm a person. I'm a dad. I'm a boyfriend. I believe in my faith strongly, and I think it helps people relate to me that they can go on there and see that I'm a regular guy. I'm actually doing this podcast from my kitchen table because my water heater flooded my basement yesterday. So I have
Mm.
regular things happen to me just like everyone else, and we've got to adjust and work through it. And so I would say Instagram is probably the most important place to follow me and to reach out to me.
Perfect. And to everyone listening, all these links are in the show notes, so just go and check that out. Brett, is there any last message that you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I would say, look, if you're listening and you feel stuck, you don't need perfect certainty. You need a clear plan. Get educated, get aligned on the goal, and move with strategy. That's what I would leave people with today. I think that that's just so important. Um, to take away. And I would say the biggest mistake that I want to help you avoid is deciding emotionally. That's either rushing out of fear or freezing from uncertainty. Clarity beats both every single time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone who are listening, and my guest, Brett Reasoner, for spending this time with us on this blend.
Thank you for having
And if today, most welcome. And if today's conversation resonated, take a moment to reflect on how you approach trust and timing in your own decisions. Real estate and business at large works best when trust leads, timing is respected, and people are supported through the life decisions behind the deal. We'll see you next time where business meets clarity, not burnout.